and welcome to a Modern Sales Pros event. I'm super excited to get started, but we'll give folks a couple more minutes to trickle in, and we'll do a fun little icebreaker with our panelists today, Molly and Ariana. So as folks are trickling in, I would love to ask if there's any out there or grew up in the 90s or know of the 90s, you will know that there had been a battle of two boy bands, NSYNC or Backstreet Boys. So I'd love to know, Molly and Ariana, which one was your favorite and why?
Ariana, I think I have to hear yours first just to see how hardcore I go in my answer.
I don't know. You seem like you were the one that had the very strong opinion on honestly, I feel like this is such a placate answer. I would jump back and forth a lot, but as you all were asking this question, the lyrics from Larger Than Life by Backstreet Boys just keeps bumping in the back of my brain. So that's probably subliminal messaging for my brain then. I'll go with Backstreet Boys.
I like it. Well, good. We've agreed for the first time today then, because I am 100% Backstreet Boys.
Really? Oh my gosh. I thought both of you would have been in sync with Justin Timberlake. I don't know. I grew up in an NSYNC household, so I think maybe I was just biased, but interesting. Good to know.
Yeah.
Well,
the deep-seated love.
Did you have a favorite? Who was the blonde one? Nick Carter?
Yeah, there's Nick. I loved Brian Littrell. Oh, loved him.
All right, let's move on. I'm sure Molly has those teen pop Tiger Beat posters tucked away. But again, thank you all for joining this event. 5 ways to earn leads before you pay for them. But before we begin, I'll say a few words from the team at Modern Sales Pros. Hello, everyone. My name is Angelica. I'm one of the community event managers at MSP. And for those of you who are not familiar, Modern Sales Pros is the world's largest and highest quality community for those in sales management, sales leadership, sales and revenue operations, and enablement, aka our Modern Sales Pros. Our mission is to create an environment for our members to answer questions they struggle to solve on their own and help them to see around corners they may not know about. We do this through live sessions like the one you're at today. We also have an online robust forum and our quarterly summits, and we're starting to get back into in-person events, which I'll talk about in the next slide. So if you're not already a part of MSP, you'll be invited to join right after this event. And speaking about our in-person event, if you're headed to Salesforce Dreamforce next month. Yeah, I can't believe it's September next month. Wow. September 12th, we're going to be in San Francisco. So come say hi. We can meet at the community in real life. I don't know about you, but I miss in-person events. And it's going to be a fun night of good food, good drinks, and networking. So if you are in San Francisco for Dreamforce, come say hi for our fun happy hour and you can register for free. I'm going to drop the link in the chat. And I'd love to see you there. And before we begin, just a quick housekeeping notes. If you have a question for Molly or Ariana, please use the Q&A tab at the top right-hand corner or use the chat and let us know where you're calling in from. First and foremost, this panel is being recorded, so if you have a colleague or friend who couldn't make it or you want to replay the amazing content later on today, we will be sending you the recording along with the key takeaways before the end of the day to your email. And we also have a fun little poll in the middle of the presentation, so stay tuned for that, and we encourage you to answer the poll when it's brought up. And super pleased to announce our sponsor for today's event, Sales Intel. Sales Intel is a full funnel SaaS solution that helps sales and marketing teams easily identify high intent accounts and find contact information for key decision makers. They're doing amazing things, so I'll drop their link in the chat. Be sure to check them out. They're doing awesome stuff. Now, I'm going to switch the slides and pass it off to our awesome speakers. Ariana, you can go first for introduction, and then I'll come back for closing remarks. So yeah, take it away, ladies.
Sure thing. Thanks for the introduction, Angelica. My name is Ariana Shannon. I'm the marketing director here at Sales Intel. I've spent my entire career in startups and really trying to find ways to scale effectively, be scrappy, and just move very quickly. So I'm very excited for this topic today, which is all about earning leads before you buy them, because in smaller organizations or even in larger organizations, like we're seeing right now in a time of scarcity, you may not always have the budget that you want to scale for things, but that doesn't mean you can't grow.
Oh, you're so right.
How about you, Molly?
Well, hi, I'm Molly. I'm the Director of Sales Marketing for Impulse Creative. I joined the dark side of sales, as I've been told by my mother. I've been a career marketer, but fell in love with the relationship between sales and marketing and how well we can work together if we're intentional about it. And I think today's conversation really builds on that and talks about ways that they're leaders and they're followers, but they're also collaborators in this process. And we're really excited to talk about lead gen. I mean, it's a big deal. It's what powers a lot of our funnel. So
yeah, and that's really what it comes down to with us. And that's where, just again, going through this, a quick introduction to, again, you heard a little bit about myself and a little bit about Sales Intel, but we really do help all of our customers and users through a 4-step process. It really comes in understanding who your target audience is. This is going to be an important part of our discussion today to make sure that you're reaching the right people, but then it's a large audience. You have to figure out who's the best fit within that, because you only have so many resources within the day. So prioritizing through the various intent offerings that we have. And then of course, it's not just enough to know the contact or the accounts and who's in market, but you have to be able to reach those people through your buying center and everything else that you're working on. But what makes Sales Intel stand apart is that we also go the extra mile. There's not a provider out there that's going to have everything that you need all the time. And that's where Sales Intel steps in to, like I said, go that extra mile and make sure that you have the context that you need through our research on demand and human verification capabilities. So you're never on your own. We're here to act as an extension of your team to help you scale and find your people and build your pipeline.
That's a tough act to follow. Hi, me again. So I'm here representing Impulse Creative, my wonderful, wonderful agency. We've been around for the past 17 years, but in the HubSpot Partner Program for the past 11. So celebrating some fun milestones and birthdays with HubSpot over the past year. We really focus in on building operations-based strategies that bridge gaps between marketing, sales, and service or success, or whatever you're calling it at your organization today. Our goal is to not just look at all of the beautiful, wonderful things that your marketing team can create and how that powers your customer experiences, but how that can be data and operationally backed for ultimately the best results, whatever those results may look like, really goal-based. So if you have any questions on that, let me know. But otherwise, most of my team will be in Boston over the next few weeks for HubSpot's Inbound Conference. So drop it in the chat if you'll be in Boston too. I know we're talking about a lot of events. We're going to San Francisco in mid-September, Boston early September. If anyone's going to be there, let us know. I'd love to meet up. Maybe have a cocktail.
Yeah, well, it's definitely event season out there, and that we're all getting prepared for, which comes to this component of marketing. So as we get into our discussion today, and Molly, I'd love to hear your perspective on this as well. Since you're in an agency setting right now, and I know I've been in one, talk to me a little bit more about how marketing really is the center brain function.
Oh my goodness. It is one of those things where I think when I talk to my mom about marketing, she's like, oh, you build pretty things. Send me pictures of what you do. I'm like, oh, please don't put me in a box like that. It really is a ping pong of your left and right brain. There's having to be analytical and be technical and be like really intentional about the data and the why you're doing things, why and how it's impacting. But there's also the applying that data creatively, making sure your audience is kind of coming along with you or attracted to what you're putting out there. And that can be really challenging. From an agency perspective, we do it for a lot of different companies, a lot of different verticals, a lot of different personas within those verticals. And there is no one size fits all. There is a one kind of like mindset to be in. And I think we're going to cover a lot of that today. But this graphic really resonates with me. So thank you for starting with it.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I got to tap into my right brain a little bit there of, okay, this is the concept I'm trying to convey to everyone, which is left brain is very important. We as marketers, we have to do the analytics. It may not be the fun part of the job, or maybe you're on the demand gen side and you absolutely love it. More power to you. We need you in the world. You got to know who you're targeting. You need to have an agreement on this quality definition. So that way, when you start applying your creativity, it's in the right place. Because this is where, and especially with the content that you create, it's always this game of what's going to resonate, what's creative, what's impactful. And as you're going through that process, we really have to stay true to what is going to net us the most gains. If we're going in a creative direction that maybe isn't where our audience is, we can get in some trouble. And then that's where, as we kind of look through this process, it's really kind of like a back and forth through this one. Oh, and I just realized this as we put this in here. Goldcast doesn't do animation there. That my animations aren't in here. See, this is the moment of the left brain. But when the slide is full up on what you can see on the left is your step one. This is to determine your ICP and your lead quality definition. As marketers, we have to have this understanding of what our baseline is and who we're trying to attract, because that's going to drive so much of what we're working on. From there, then you get into this component of understanding the ideation and the branding component. So that's your top right section over there. Then once you go into that component, you get to really be creative. Once you know who you're targeting, you have your brand positioning figured out. Like Sales Intel, we went through a brand refresh earlier this year, and that's where our tagline, "Find your people, build your pipeline," came from. And I really liked it because we had a lot of back and forth. It's not just that we want you to find who you're looking for. We also want you to find your business. We also want you to find your people in us. But it's not just enough to find your people. You actually have to do something with it. You have to build your pipeline. You have to take action on the data that you have, and that's why it works. So then you can take that as a concept and apply it creatively. But then the very last step, which is this bottom left that unfortunately you can't see, is the analytic component. Because just because you have this creative idea, I feel like we've all been there before, Molly. You've had a creative idea, it was supposed to fit, but for whatever reason, it just didn't work like you thought it would.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think those are probably the moments I remember just as vividly as the moments where something went off without a hitch, probably because depending on where you are in my career, we had some earlier creative moments that just felt fun and exciting and new, and just the audience didn't agree with us on it. But I think those are the moments that teach you a lot too. Those processes where you go through evaluating what didn't work, why didn't it work. You learn so much from that. And just because an idea didn't work the first time doesn't mean that it's wrong. It just means some part of it wasn't working. How can we, at scale or in a bubble, how can we test those things? How can we make sure that we're always going back to that step one? Because no matter what we do around the rest, I like that if there's one that's staying up here, I'm glad it's that one. Like it always comes back to that step one. It's making sure that everything we do is really talking to that ICP. So I wish you could see the whole graphic though.
Well, everyone should be getting a recap so they can see the graphic then. It'll come through, and I'm sure we'll repurpose this because that's a whole other thing we'll get into later in the presentation. But I'd also like to kick off and get some interaction from you all that are listening in here. Where are you spending the most of your time in your content marketing? Are you in that ideation? Are you in research, creating, editing, distribution? How are you moving your content around? So let's pull that poll up. You should be able to see it in your poll panel on the right, and give everyone just a little bit. And Molly, thank you for bringing this poll question. You said you were at an event recently where you got to see everyone else's response to this.
Yeah, it was so eye-opening. It was a presentation by Jasper AI. So if you're in the kind of space looking at tools that help with content from a machine learning perspective, it's a pretty cool one. But the presentation was kind of focused around, as humans, where do we spend the most time while we're creating content? And where really should we be spending the most time? And this result really surprised me. I don't want to bias anyone, so I'm going to wait for your answers. But I think like breaking down your content marketing into these buckets, I definitely had feelings when the chart came up. They were like, here are 5 areas. They pulled a ton of people and pulled some results. And when they showed them, it made me sad. I was like, come on, we do so many things, and these 5 buckets are so different and so important to the results that we could get from our content. And yeah, I'm gonna be quiet while y'all think about your answers.
Well, it's good because I'm actually going to go ahead and close out the poll. We got a few responses in here, so you should be able to see it, but not surprising. It's very similar to what you found too, Molly. We spend the majority of our time just creating content. And why is that? We're always in the cycle of we need to create more content, we need to do more things, but there's always more that happens into it. So if we're going to be spending all of this time creating the content, we want to make sure it's promoting these areas where we can grow the most.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that while creation may be where we spend the most time, like, could we pull some of that time back out in that idea and research stage? Should we be reallocating some of that time into distribution so that all of the time that we're focusing there in the middle of the process, distribution shouldn't be the fastest thing we do. It should be the thing that happens the most ongoing. And yeah, so I agree with y'all. I really resonated with this, with y'all, with what everyone who's taken this poll, I think, in ever says. The findings clearly come out to creation being where we kind of spend our time. And I hope today we give you some good tips to make that a little more efficient and hopefully disperse some of that time around.
No, absolutely. And that's where we're going to open this up with a disclaimer because SEO is key. It's a very key, important part of organic. However, there is so much information out there, and there are so many other people that are more intelligent than me with SEO that you can get guidance from, that it's so important. And also, this changes a lot with all the changes that are happening with AI and Google search and the SEO components. Molly and I could give you advice, and it could change in the next couple of weeks. So we want to come back to the truths that we know are always helpful in guiding this. And you should definitely keep SEO as a key part of your strategy and be researching that and staying on top of it. But what we will be covering today is going to be how are you diagnosing your marketing, your content marketing challenge. There's 3 common areas that people typically run into. We're going to tackle those. Then we're going to go through the 5 ways that you can build your content to earn leads organically before you have to go to paid channels, because there's always this great component of you can build it and they will come. And yes, that's true. You do have to build the content and earn some leads to make sure whatever you're amplifying in paid is spending your budget wisely. That's the big thing. It's not that you can't do the chicken and the egg. You just want to make sure you're using your paid dollars in the best way possible. Nailing your organic strategy is a great way to do that. And then, of course, it's not enough just to create the content. You have to do it at scale without it being a huge time suck and taking all of your time so that you're only focusing on creating and you're not able to do distribution, or you're not able to do anything else. So that's where we're going to go. Molly, let's kick us off with the 3 common challenges. These did not come to a surprise to you at all.
No, oh my goodness. When I saw this slide, I said, yeah, I talk about this all day, every day. This is, yes, I actually asked if I could screenshot it and just keep it for myself. But I think that in content marketing, while we're spending so much time on the content itself, sometimes we get too laser focused. We need to step back out and see that bigger picture. When reading through your content, don't be too broad. Like, put on your hat of your ICP, and they don't know you. They don't know who wrote this, but they're looking for something helpful. They went to Google, they went to whatever channel your distribution was on, and they found your article and they're looking for an answer. So don't be too broad. Give them the answer they're looking for. I think that, Ariana, you said something like, this is the I can help everyone with everything trap.
Yes, this is the trap of, well, everyone can use our product and solution. Okay, maybe. There may be few instances where that could be true, but for the most of us, when we're trying to grow efficiently and you're trying to determine, well, what do I write next? When you go too broad, you try to cover too much and you spread yourself too thin. And then you end up in either one of these other categories because you slingshot in the opposite direction.
Absolutely. Yeah. What is it? If you try to be all things to all people, you're kind of being nothing to no one. It's better to, then you're really, you're really on that other side.
Yep.
I think that really carries into being too narrow, right? Like if you are being too hyper focused, or if you are too like fixated on one specific pain point or one specific audience, you could be missing out on so many other cool applications of your product or your solution or your service. You could be immediately disqualifying a certain audience that could be a really great untapped market. I think that there's a beautiful middle ground, and sometimes you don't know till you try. But I think that being too narrow is just as pigeonholing as being too broad. What do you think?
No, absolutely. If you're going too specific, you're going to shoot yourself in the foot a little bit at time because you're going to write yourself into a corner where you're saying, well, we've already covered all this stuff. There's no more else to write. And then if you combine that, because these don't have to happen in isolation, you can be too broad and too boring and too narrow and too boring. If you're already being too narrow and then you're not resonating, or you're being unrelatable is another way to look at being, quote, too boring, then you're already in a bad spot. So maybe you're in one of these three categories, but this is where we're going to take all of this conversation and hopefully give you a framework that you can walk away with to start understanding, how do I prioritize my organic content? What messaging do I write, and where do I go that's going to make me the most impactful to my audience that I'm trying to build? And this is going to take us into our first component. So again, Molly and I have been hammering this away, but for all the people in the back, account ICP data. This is so important to your organic audience. Why? Because it gives you a baseline. And this isn't just the list of, oh, I know that my company is targeting people that are Google resellers and they have a revenue of $100 million and they're this kind of employee size. That's the data. That's very important. What this does is gives you that creative leap to go to the right side of your brain. When you look at this, you can say, okay, let's go with the Google reseller example. I want to target those particular audiences. Great. I know that they're going to have these technologies and they're interested in maybe buyers that have Microsoft, or they've got other technologies and they're trying to do a competitive play. That's where your technographic data component comes in as well. You understand what it is they use. You understand what it is that their audience is looking for, and you can create content that captures their audience and captures their mind. This goes well beyond, again, just looking at this list of data. It's that interpretation and that human component to really create something that is a baseline of what your people are interested in, what it is that there can be helpful with, and what you're working on.
Oh, absolutely. I think that when you're looking at the business as a whole, right? Because in that scenario, you never know who the first person from that company is going to be knocking on your door. We're going to assume that our leads are knocking on our door in this analogy. But like, you don't know if it's going to be that like decision maker is going to be the first one to come in, and then they're going to bring in users to help validate. You don't know if it's going to be a user who's looking to solve a problem they have on their day-to-day and escalate something up to their team. You don't know if it's an influencer whose sole job is to come out, find ideas, bring it to the team, present their favorite option, get that line, like signature on the dotted line. So thinking about the company as a whole, thinking about their vertical, thinking about what really works for us. And I love that ABM is in there too, because then you're really writing specifically to them. You're creating specifically to them. So I think that leads us into the talking about the humans. And in our human aspect, we have to break those down into personas. I know we talked about 3 just now, but there are so many different ways to slice and dice the humans that make up that business and their different roles within the buying process, whether they're hunters and they're out looking for information and gathering tons of resources, whether they're the, well, I guess a hunter would technically, that would be a gatherer, but you know what I mean. But we're
with you, Molly.
Yeah, you're following along. Y'all are smart. But I think that when you look at the humans who make up these organizations and the humans you have to talk to, you have to communicate with, whether that's one-to-many through your marketing content or one-to-one through your sales content and your sales enablement. I think that in this conversation, you have to figure out what's best for your business and for the businesses you're talking to. This is one of those, like, we have best practices on defining personas, but you have to define them kind of your way too. This also feeds into their buyer's journey, right? Just defining who they are, what they care about, what problems they feel, their kind of like psychographic plus business impact of the challenges they're experiencing is one piece. But the journey that they go through in making one of these decisions is also important. Where those fall in, like when they're kind of evaluating issues versus they're evaluating vendors versus they're trying to pick which of your packages or services is exactly right. Marketing plays such a big part, and content can really make or break that process of like helpfulness and altruistic information sharing. I think that bridge is where I spend a lot of time on our team. But Ariana, we also talked about earlier this like product-led growth, and I want to hand it over to you to kind of
absolutely, because you touched on a good component, of course, which is where are they? What kind of piece are you writing from? This is a question I get from content writers from time to time of, okay, Ariana, what piece is this? Is this an awareness piece or is this a conversion piece? Because you write them differently, but also, and where understanding your persona within that ICP definition, if we take this through the lens of, okay, but who do I write for first? How can I stop being too broad? How can I narrow my audience? Or how do I expand my audience and be more relatable? It really comes down to what your business is doing. Typically, if you are if you're an organization that has a lower ACV, it's a high velocity, it's that product-led growth or that PLG motion, there's going to be a high propensity to talk to the user because more often that's who you're talking to. Sure, if you've got an upward motion where you can have like all of the user components and then that rolls up into where they can upgrade to a larger component, great. You can get to the influencer and the buyer, but that's maybe not where you start. If you're trying to grow really, really quickly, you want to identify the user, and that's very, very important. And actually where I think a lot of SaaS companies, you're starting to see the shift a bit more is to address this user, because we've all been hammering away at the buyers for so long that all of the emails, our inboxes are overwhelmed. But on the flip side of that, if you are a higher, or if you have a higher ACV and you have multiple decision makers in your buying committee and you have a longer sales cycle, yes, you need to be talking to your buyer, but you also need to be talking to your influencer. And Molly, that's what you said. It's sometimes the people that are the gatherers of information. Hey, go out and research these technologies and come back to me with your top 2 picks and we'll go from there. So it's very important to understand your business and understand what motion you're trying to get from here. Usually falling into one of those 2 buckets is a good way to start. If you're really building your content for the first time, if you've got a more specific question for us, we will have a Q&A at the end. You can ask us directly to give some advice on your particular situation. But then Molly, here's a question we get all the time, which is when you're talking to those people, how do you read their minds? What are they wanting to know? What are they wanting to read? And while intent data, I'll admit, it is not a silver bullet. It is a huge tool that can be used in several ways, but it really has been helpful for everything that we've been doing at Sales Intel, and the fact that we've been able to improve our marketing efficiency by like 3 times over from using this process and these things we've talked about. So whenever you're coming through to leverage your buying intent, and we'll go to the SEO pillars specifically, because that's where you're going to get that search engine optimization. It's going to be very helpful, but it doesn't necessarily mean that your SEO pillars and your intent topics are 2 different things. Yeah, when you get through your intent topics, there are literally thousands of them out there to pick from. It's then a question of intelligently choosing which ones are the best fit for your business, which ones are going to be the most impactful for the audience that you're doing. Once you unlock what those are, Typically, you see them in like a competitor focus. You're looking at topics for specific products. You're looking at topics for your branding solution. You're looking at topics for your industry. Once you unlock the ones that work for you, you're going to get a lot of impact from this because you can leverage that in your content creation and even email marketing. There's why not take the intent topic and put it in your emails?
Right.
Why not put it in your
There's intent data behind it. It should be in your subject line for sure. I also love that the pillar concept gives us a framework. And I'm not a huge framework person. I don't like rules and boxes I have to be in. But I like the framework that pillars give us for that connectivity, that it's not like write a piece of content, spend a ton of time, publish it, never think about it again. It really keeps you in that idea and distribution where you're creating those like sub pages off of your pillar. You're creating content that's continuously pointing into that ecosystem. You're creating this web, rather than like one linear path for a piece of content. Because intent, like that intent data is the same way. It's going to grow. It's going to evolve over time. It's not going to be a snapshot you take one day and match in a year from now. And your content should evolve along with that, with your buyers.
Absolutely. And that's where when we also look at all of these components of leveraging the buyer intent and your interest, that's where also news data plays a huge role. Because yes, we're primarily talking about marketing. That's kind of our bread and butter. But this is where you can absolutely help your organization. Like it's not just marketing's job to attract leads. It's a whole go-to-market motion. You need sales. You can leverage news data to create specific triggers that you are helping to support content creation for. Then once they see it, they can just go run the play. And you've supported them. They have the correct messaging. They're going to be on brand. They're going to be moving in the right direction that you want at the right audience because you've been doing your ICP work so well. Then it just runs like a machine. And then you're able to bridge that gap.
Oh, the enablement there is so, so beautiful.
And then, of course, we would be remiss to not mention review sites and also user-generated content. There is so much out there, and it's always great to have this done. You've also heard this referred to as like the voice of the customer, maybe, to pull that in where you're able to see what is really resonating with people, what keeps them coming back, what are their pain points, what are things that need to be addressed or maybe need to be repositioned in your audience that you can really get in front of with your organic content.
Absolutely. Even down to the nitty gritty, like what are the words they use? Are they calling this something that we're not speaking the same language on this challenge or this solution today? Those are like those little golden nuggets that can really show that you care and you understand them. The one thing that I would add, I'm going to take it one step further and say, I think you should also be hunting for those little golden nuggets, those little phrases and words and topics in their social media. Now, at scale, this can be a challenging thing to do, but this is a great place where marketing can pull from sales team processes. At our team, when we have a new lead come in, when we have an inbound lead, first thing we do is check their LinkedIn. What are they talking about? What their job history? What are pages they follow? Things that they do. Now, I'm like, please don't look at mine. I don't update my LinkedIn often enough. I am active, commenting, liking, and sharing posts, but like the bullet points on my job description, don't even read those. You may not want to be friends with me after this. But those are really valuable moments. How are they spending their free time on a professional social network, sharing their ideas, uplifting others in the community, seeing who they resonate with and what problems or solutions they're giving out into the world. So they're willing to put it out in the world. You bet it's something that they're going to want to talk about in this setting where we're being helpful, we're creating content, we're having these like active conversations essentially via the media that we're creating. If we can mirror what they're saying about themselves, if they can see a little bit of themselves in our content, it's going to like help you build that trust and help propel that forward and really kick the relationship off on a great foot.
No, and I love the detail that you went into that on, Molly. It's what they're posting, what they're talking about. Salespeople, if you're here, hear me. Hey, we went to the same alma mater, or hey, you went to that school. It doesn't work anymore.
I want it. I don't care.
The profile is not enough. It's engaging with us. It's looking at all of that content to, again, find what works there. to make sure that you're really resonating. And that's where, when you are doing that one-to-one content, it's really, really impactful in another way that, again, sales and marketing can benefit from using the same type of information and the same type of data. But then here's the last point that we'll have to get into, Molly, which is always what we're asked. Well, okay, you've said all these things, and all of these things sound great, but I don't have the time. I've got a budget meeting. I've got to go do all of this. Well, it can be done at scale. It can be scale.
It absolutely can be done at scale. I think despite, the majority of our friends here today saying that content creation is where we spend the most time, there are ways that we can make that time a little more efficient. We may not be spending, we have a couple ideas that'll make it less time. But I think in the scalability of it, that like early part of those 5 steps, that idea, that research, we talked a lot about that today. That's so critical to making sure whatever you do next hits the mark, but also kind of stays evergreen. You don't always need to be like news hacking and top trips of 2023. Guess what? No one's going to care on January 1st, 2024. Make it evergreen. Make it something that A, make it easier for yourself to update and redistribute. B, make it something that stands out in someone's timeline. Those types of things can really give you a lot more mileage out of your existing efforts without really changing anything else.
No, absolutely. And I'm going to take us back to the first point, because
sorry, I jumped ahead. I got excited.
Oh, no, you're fine. Like, that's why the whole thing is here, just to remind us of all of the goodness. Whenever you're going through that left brain motion, okay, you've got your audience, then you jump to the right brain and you're being creative. Marketers, and I've fallen into this trap too, sometimes we tend to have the thought of, great, I did this awesome white paper, I did this webinar. Now I can never talk about the same thing ever again. Who made that rule? When was that imposed? I'm going to blame academia that said, no, you can't take one paper into the next class, even though they're the same thing. Right. If you have a good concept and it has legs, amplify it. That's one way to spend less time in creation and more time in amplification. If you can take the same idea and give it slightly different spins into the channels that you're going in, that's where you can do a little bit of newsjacking. If your hub component has a spoke that relates to that angle, then go for it. That's where you can make sure that what you're doing is relevant, but also relates back to that core message that you're trying to communicate to that buyer, that you're trying to communicate to that user, that ultimately leads to organic leads. This is how you scale efficiently. That's the whole point. Create content that attracts the right people at the right time. That's the goal. So yeah, that's my passion on Hub and Spoke. I love it.
I think that we've done a great job today of the third one. We've kind of played on each other's audiences from a company, but also from a personal audience perspective to say, hey, let's kind of cross-pollinate. I love that word that you use. Let's cross-pollinate. There's no reason why I should create this exact same piece of content with just my thoughts, and you should create this piece of content with your thoughts. If we came together and built this content together and then shared it with everyone we know, we're both going to reap the benefits of that. Now that's not why we do it. We do this because we love this. But I think from a content perspective, don't sell yourself short. You deserve to work with those other companies that you look up to, and they would be excited to work alongside of you as well. Those are really great opportunities for not only audience, but improving messaging, and having that as some like extra social proof on your site too, to show, look at all of the friends we have. We're so great. Look at all the people that we love to work with. They're so great too, and build that network. Can be really, really powerful in your content creation.
And the brain sharing that comes through that. Picking the right people that are also looking at the same or similar audience as you, creating that content, but then also just the creative collaboration that comes from talking shop, especially with all of us, how remote we are. There's no one in my family that understands what I do, and that's fine. I love them. I love having conversations with colleagues that understand exactly what I do, what I'm talking about, and that can help me figure out these other challenges of content, like, hey, we're creating this awesome blog piece and it's been bringing all of this traffic, but no one's converting. We're trying to figure out why that is, or we've been testing this new theory. Have you been testing that too? What's been working for you? Like a big one that people have been asking about right now is AI. If you're a marketer and you're not talking about AI, you're not thinking about AI, you are behind the curve. We have to start considering artificial intelligence as a tool for what we're doing. And this is where I'm going to get on my AI soapbox for a little bit.
Do it.
It's a tool. You have to keep in mind what the future of AI is going to be and where you're trying to go. So the processes you adopt today impact what you're doing in the next quarter and impact the outcomes that you're going to see. We're already starting to see a lot of different algorithms, like on social media and in search engines, lower the ranking of what they determine is AI generated content alone. So when you're creating with this, it's a great way to do at scale. AI is a great way for ideation to come up with kind of like a bot that has some banter, but you do need to put guardrails on it. We can't put a prompt in and get a post and then publish it. It's not going to net you the results that you're hoping for. Just like with data in the industry that I'm in, it only gets you so far. Machine verified is great, but you have to have that next level to get to the quality and the authenticity and the personality of what it is that you're doing.
Absolutely. I think it goes back to those challenges. Even no matter if you're the one writing the content or if a robot is, we can show how much I know about technology. If a human or a robot is doing it, then you still have to watch out for those pitfalls. One of the things that I see in some of the testing I've done is it comes out too broad. It doesn't sound like something I would say. I'm like, oh, I ramble. I like to give examples, and I like to give specific examples I know my personas are really going to like. I'm more of an editor than a first-time draft quality writer. But like too broad or too narrow. I've seen the AI really go in and really hone in on one specific part of my prompt and took it down a little rabbit trail. But I've also been practicing on how to make my prompts have a little more personality. I talk to these AI tools like they're my Alexa, and I shouldn't. I need to tell them, like, give it some personality. I want it to sound like me. So I have found that I'm spending more time in kind of getting it to where I want it to go, but I'm optimistic.
Yeah, and that's why with whatever tool you're using, you have to use that prompt. You've got to have a prompt that works for what you're doing. And we're getting closer to the time. I still want to have some space for us to answer some questions from everyone here. So please start putting things in the QA. We're about to be there, so get ahead of it. Let's bring all this back together. So everything that we've learned from here, you can bring it into this table as a starting block for you. Whether you're being too broad, too narrow, you're focusing on one person and you're trying to expand, start at the top, align with your organization. Who are you trying to attract and why? What do they look like? What are the topics that they are most interested in, intent, that you can layer on to help guide some of your content efforts. From there, then you have to go into that persona as well. And I think I reversed those. You got to go into the persona, know who you're talking to, and then build all of this at scale. This template is a good way of doing this because it helps you to be very specific and very focused. Whenever you're staring at a blank page, trying to create content, it's very difficult. And that's part of the allure of AI. You can try to chat in a prompt and you get something back, and now you're not at square one. For here, coming up with your ICP, like priority one, is going to be different for a little bit of everybody. Take the knowledge that you have from today, look at what you're doing, see if there's a way that you can be more specific. So for example, if you are that company that's focusing on mid-market accounts that have high ACVs, you need to be focusing on that. Make sure you put your industries in here, understand what part of your ICP you're addressing, the impact that's going to have on the business, your total personas that are in there, and then the SEO evergreen and AI friendly components that you can do for that particular persona, and prioritize them first. Because we do have to scale. We do have to address a lot of people, but that doesn't mean you have to do it all at one time. That's the other challenge we fall into when creating content, is we're trying to create a piece for this persona, a piece for that persona, a piece for that persona, and we try to move everything forward inches. If you focus on the biggest priority first and move that forward, you will net gains in your organic traffic and where you want to be. Then you can come up with the next one and then the next one. It's all about prioritization of your resources and understanding what's going to have the biggest impact to your business. So please take this with you. I highly recommend it. Like I said, Sales Intel, we've been doing this for a little bit, and even since the beginning of the year of adopting these strategies, our organic channels are yielding the highest revenue contribution every month. We shorten the sales cycle for our organic opportunities. Woohoo. Yes, it is exciting.
Yes.
And then we've got consistent ACVs coming for the organic channel. We know what our expected contribution is supposed to be. So that way we can do more experimentation and be more right-brained. You can be more creative. That's ultimately, especially me, where I want to be is on that side of being creative and having fun with what we do.
Oh my gosh, I love it. I have nothing to add.
Okay, I was going to say, I took up the soapbox on that one for a little bit, but now we want to move into Q&A. I want to make sure that we're getting some components in here.
That was the mic drop moment.
Mic drop moment. Absolutely. Well, we've already got one.
Yeah, we had a couple of questions. And I'm so sorry if I say your name wrong. Yasmin was asking about which AI tools. So I dropped a quick note in the Q&A section. I'm sorry, I moved your message to the Q&A area. I'm not sure if I was supposed to, but I answered it there too. I'm currently testing Jasper AI. Really, like, so far it's pretty wonderful in terms of like other tools I've used. I feel like the first time quality is a bit better than some of the tools I've used before. I'm still not trusting it to write anything for me, but I am trusting it in my ideation process. So if I don't have any time to manufacture anywhere in my content creation flow, I am using it to help me be more efficient in that front end of the process, to say, hey, give me like 10 blog ideas that talk to this persona about this thing and also include a Taylor Swift lyric in the title. So kind of using it in those to help spur creativity and find something unique. It definitely alleviates some of the like weight on my shoulders. I feel that like sometimes I feel like I need to get this done. I don't know how to be creative in this moment. I am in some cases using AI to really nudge me down that flow.
Yeah. And then I'm also going to add to that the answer to that question, Molly, because I love that you have a good test of the one that you're starting to use. I would also say, let's be mindful of what's coming up, because there's great, like I said, there's great of what's helping us right now, but then we have to look forward to what's going to be impacting us. Google is working on their own AI.
Yep.
When it comes to AI generated content, and again, I'm just spitballing here, perhaps they'll be more friendly to their own AI. So at some point, keep tabs on what they're doing and keep that and see how it impacts your SEO. Again, we're going to see how that one plays out, but there should be a strong correlation there. I would be surprised if there's not a correlation between what they choose to rank based on the AI it came from. Just my 2 cents.
Yeah. HubSpot's working on their own AI. Love HubSpot and everything they do, but it ain't it yet. So just without what you will. But I think it's also you're right. There's a lot to come. It's still very early. And I know that early adopters have already moved on to new, bigger and better things and know everything about it. But I will say one thing, Impulse Creative is very much mindful of what is this doing to marketing and sales overall. We are not using it for any of our clients today just because we haven't figured out the best way to make it work reliably. We also are doing a lot of work to validate some of these tools before we use them, because from a machine learning perspective, data privacy and security is a really interesting side of that. What of my information is it using to learn? What can I share with it to be specific enough to get content I need, but not have it store that somewhere I didn't authorize it to? So there are a few other pieces there that I'm definitely thinking about.
No, it's good. I love also the dedication of, I want to test this before I start telling all my clients that it works, because yes, test, like, have fun, experiment, but verify what you're doing and make sure that it scales with you. We got another question in here from Charisse. And I definitely love this. Any suggestions for solo marketers trying their best to keep everything afloat? I hear you. Yes. Whenever you're on a small team, It's a difference between knowing, yes, I do want to do all these things, but the time, where does the time come from? So depending on, Charisse, where you're focusing, what your campaigns are, again, go back to that table that we had shown. I'll flip back up here so you can see it, and think through this as a concept of how do you prioritize your time? So where are you going to get the most impact from your business, and then going through that analytical arm with your other sales team or salesperson, maybe the size of your organization, to make sure that it's resonating. Then you can create a recipe for success. Right now, it's just going to be focusing on what's bringing you in the most leads, the correct ones, not just the highest amount, but the highest quality, of course, and making sure that that works for you. AI is a great way to do that. A hub and spoke model would be a great way to do that. Find the one or two concepts for that audience that fits, and replay. Go on replay. Go on your own tour of your content and make that work for you. Molly, anything you want to add there?
The only thing I would add is define what your good enough is. At no point in this conversation do we ever say that your content has to be perfect. As long as it's aligned in these areas, there is a good enough. You could keep going through rounds of revisions. When I was a one-woman marketing department at a small technology company who shall remain nameless, the CEO really, really wanted to have a hand in every piece of content that went out, which meant we put out 3 pieces of content a year because there was no concept of good enough. It may not be every single word exactly the way that it needs to be from an SEO or from a persona, and it's not, all the stars aren't perfectly aligned. But if you are keeping all of these things in mind and you're coming at it from that angle, get it out there, see what people think. The worst that's going to happen is you get 0 views, which you're not going to get anyway if you don't hit publish. So there's always room for optimization. There's always room for iteration. There's always room for kind of redistributing in different ways to different audiences. Failing is good. Failing teaches us things. And so kind of don't hold yourself back. Don't be afraid. Sometimes you just got to hit send.
Absolutely. Thank you for bringing us back to that component, because yes, there is a point of it's good enough. I have to move on. Mm-hmm. It's good enough. You have to move on. You've got to move on to the next thing. That's awesome. Great advice there, Molly. We've got a few more questions in here. Are you using any particular tool for persona development?
I have a Google Slides template that I use. We are humans' brains, if I'm being completely honest. We're using a lot of humans' brains. We're doing a lot of one-to-one interviews, but we're also using things like some intent data and some like sales intel. And there are tools that I think really augment that from a like, here's all my information. Can you kind of poop this out for me? I don't think there is that. I think that those tools like Ariana was talking about, I mean, sales intel is hands down an amazing tool to give you that qualitative and quantitative data, but it's what you have to do with it after too, like Ariana said. So I'm going to plug them. That's the only tool that I would recommend today other than human to human interactions.
No, I'm right there with you, Molly. Even us, like we use our own brains for this, because where sales intel comes in and it helps you identify that ICP of that big bucket that you could be talking to. But then who do you talk to first and why? It comes down to your particular business cases. So who are you best fitted to serve? Who's going to be benefiting from that? Who's buying that? Whoever that buyer is, in our case, because we're on the mid-market, like high ACV component, what are their problems? What are the pains that they're trying to solve? So it's really just a logic chart. There's not a good answer there other than it's a logic chart for hopefully things that we're already aware of what are their pain? What are they trying to solve? You can sometimes surmise that as what's the one thing that keeps them up at night. So for marketers, it's lack of leads, lack of quality leads. That's one thing that keeps us up at night. For salespeople, it's lack of pipeline. And you can go on and on through your various personas. But yeah, really just understanding, having good data to help you understand who you're targeting. So wherever you're messaging that persona, you're being efficient, but going through what you understand about your own business to be more specific. And that's probably why there isn't a tool just yet for that one. The AI hasn't evolved.
It would be hard. That's a hard one to take that like humanity out of.
Absolutely. All right, I want to make sure we've gotten through all of our questions here.
Let's see.
Looks like we've got one more.
Oh, how often should you post on LinkedIn? This is like the age-old question. I know there are graphics everywhere that tell you like different numbers and different days of the weeks and all those things. I'm going to give you such a cop-out answer, and I'm going to hand it to Ariana because she have a real one. My cop-out answer is, I think it's less about how often you post and about how your community interacts with it. Full disclaimer, the Impulse Creative LinkedIn page does not do well. My personal LinkedIn, our CEOs, our VP of operations, our marketing coordinators, our sales admins, our growth strategists, their personal LinkedIns, magic. That's where the magic happens. They're looking for a human's insight, not like what is a company blasting out into the world. So what we've done is we said, hey, there are certain posts that when we share, we would love if the company, like individual people at our company reshared it. We'd love to get some extra visibility on this for whatever campaign or goal we're working towards as a marketing department. But those interactions kind of dictate where we go next. From a personal standpoint, I have some connections in my network that post every single day, multiple times a day. I have some who post like once a year, and every time we see it, we're like, oh my gosh, we love it. We love seeing you here. So I think it's what feels right for you and what is your audience looking for, but that's the most roundabout non-answer I've probably ever given someone.
Honestly, Molly, it didn't sound like a cop-out to me. It sounded like an honest answer, because sure, I could stand here in all my confidence and be like 3 or 5.
You could.
In all honesty, it also depends on what you have to say. So it's not just pumping out content for you, like whatever you're saying, it needs to engage, educate, or I'm forgetting my third E. Oh my gosh. Educate, engage, excite, maybe is the third one. I'll remember it. But it needs to be doing a function. So whatever you're posting, it needs to be relevant. But honestly, if you're looking for, and I think what you're getting through that one is, how do I get the most out of LinkedIn? How do I make sure that I'm relevant? It does come back to those engagements. And just like how organic content has SEO that moderates it, you've got social media that has the almighty algorithm that moderates that. And it changes from time to time. I think LinkedIn just did a refresh of theirs. I've been talking with my social team about this, of what's actually getting engagement. It's not about the frequency of posting, but what you're posting and engagements, and again, cross-pollination of audiences, and really looking for conversation.
Absolutely.
So how often should you post? Look at the things you have to say, look at what you're posting, what's been working for you. Another way you can do that is look at your competitors, see what's really working for them, and see if there's ways you can emulate. There's I love this concept of steal like an artist.
Mm-hmm.
You have your
we're
own.
not copying them. We're just building on their successes and making them better for us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Well, I think that was all of the questions that we had come through today, which is good because we're right at the time. I do want to make sure that everyone understands that we do have an offer that's going out with Sales Intel. You have the opportunity to get unlimited credits and build unlimited opportunity with your business. By becoming a Sales Intel user, you can join the pricing revolution to where you can now access as much data as you want within Sales Intel. All this information helps you build your ICP, understand your intent, and then get in front of all those personas efficiently to have marketing pipeline efficiently, especially with organic.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Ariana and Molly, for this amazing session. And thank you, everyone, for your participation today in the chat and the Q&A, as well as the polls. Just a quick reminder for folks in the audience that this event is recorded along with the key takeaways, and any links mentioned in the whole presentation will be made available on the MSP previous event page before the end of the day. We'll be sure to send that to you straight to your inbox. So thanks again, and we hope to see you at the next MSP event. Bye, everyone.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.